Welcome to the Let's Get Entrepreneurial podcast, your go-to resource for navigating the world of entrepreneurship.
Join us as we explore the crucial elements that make an elevator pitch resonate, from clarity and brevity to the power of a strong hook. We'll also share tips and techniques to help you communicate your business's value proposition effectively.
The Let's Get Entrepreneurial podcast is your ultimate launchpad for igniting ideas and skyrocketing your entrepreneurial dreams. Tune in, buckle up, and let's unleash the entrepreneurial spirit within. Your two hosts will be Professor Gary Palin and serial entrepreneur Ryan Budden.
Hello, Professor Palin. How are you today?
Doing very well. How are you doing today?
I'm doing brilliantly as always. We've gotten together to discuss a topic that is near and dear to both of us, but particularly you because of your experience with them, and that's an elevator pitch. For those of us that aren't intimately familiar with your background, you actually launched one of the first pitch competitions in the world. Did I get that right?
Well, you're close. I launched one of the first business plan competitions in the world. This was when I was at NC State University, and oh my God, probably over 30 some odd years ago. With that, they developed and morphed into more of an elevator pitch competition. I've lived through the experience of morphing from just the standard business plan competitions to the elevator pitch competitions. As a matter of fact, I brought 3 students from Elon University, where you graduated, to an elevator pitch in Korea. It was sponsored by MIT, and it was an open competition that was not just for students, it was anyone in the world. One of your colleagues came in first place at that competition.
I'm intimately familiar with the story. It's very cool. We're talking to the expert, is what I'm hearing.
Well, I've had some experience, let's put it that way. A very good friend of mine, I don't mean to belabor this, created the first actually standalone elevator pitch competition in the world. His name was Stan Mandel at Wake Forest University. And he actually put students on an elevator and the judge on the elevator and had them ride up and do the pitches.
Very cool. Well, that gets into the next topic, which is what is an elevator pitch? I think most people will be familiar with the term of a pitch, aka trying to get someone to understand a venture that you're going with or participate in that venture. But an elevator pitch is that you imagine this scenario in which you get onto an elevator and standing next to you when the doors close is the ideal person for you to try and tell about your business. And you have 2 floors or 3 floors to convey your idea and convince them to be a part of it in some way.
It's a very, very short pitch. You have to be very clear and concise with the presentation. And typically, I've seen them 30 seconds, 1 minute, 2 minutes, but not a hell of a lot more than that.
I've participated in a few in my career. From what I can really remember, it's between 45 seconds and 2 minutes.
You have to be very understanding of what message you're trying to get across. And also with the elevator pitch, you want to have a compelling hook. Why should someone listen to you in that short period of time and be interested in? I tend to call that an impact statement or a why should they care statement right up front so that they will listen to you. You don't have a heck of a lot of time to capture them.
The structure of this is really important. Undeniably, that first part of the structure has to be that hook. Why are they listening? What's the big statement to grab their attention, make them focus on you? As we all know, you're standing in an elevator. Not many people are talking to strangers next to them. What are the first words out of your mouth that are, oh, maybe I should listen to this person?
I tend to use data points or storytelling, one of the 2 methods garnering someone's interest. You want to say something so the person say, oh, wow, I didn't know that. That's interesting.
That's the hook. You're now the sole focus of attention, and the next words out of your mouth actually matter. What would that second part of the structure be?
You want to understand your audience. It depends who you're speaking to. If you're speaking to an investor, that's one thing. If you're speaking to a customer, that's another thing. Who is the audience? But you want to have a specific area of interest. And before you start talking, you want to identify what is your goal of the pitch. Once you've got the impact statement, I like to clarify what my unique value proposition is. What value am I bringing to the market? Because if you are not creating value, you do not have a viable concept.
That's huge. And again, so we started with the hook. That next one is the value proposition. A really good place to go from there is what are the unique selling points? What actually makes you different than other people that can captivate with someone with the same hook and are still trying to target that same market?
You ideally have identified a problem or a pain point that a large group of people have. And then the marketing components will be, how do you have a solution to that problem or pain point?
I like that. That's a good way of phrasing it. You're the solution to this problem that you have articulated to the person and hopefully caught their attention because they're like, wow, that does exist in my life. That is a problem.
From there, I'd like to explain my business model very briefly. How am I going to monetize this? How am I going to make money? Because if I'm talking to an investor specifically, you better get to the money part fairly quickly.
Yeah. And that's a part of it that might differ depending on the audience. If this elevator pitch is for somebody to join the team, that might be how they would be a valued team member, what they can add to it. If you're doing it to a customer, grabbing somebody that maybe is a little bit out of your league, you get on the elevator and it's the CEO of a company you've been trying to reach out to, how your product can uniquely fix a need that they have.
Very important. Many people miss this part. It's the last part. And I'm going to go to the second to last part after I talk about this. But the last part is a call to action.
Right.
What do I want to have? I want a specific action associated with that. But right before the call to action, I want to share my vision. Where do I see this going? What's the big picture? What impact will it have? That's the final means to capture their attention. And then a call to action. It could be just simply as, could we meet to have further conversation about this?
For those who aspire to go higher in their entrepreneurial journey, we've got something just for you. Coming up next.
Are you ready to unlock your entrepreneurial potential? Introducing the Janus Entrepreneurial Report, your personalized roadmap to success. In just minutes, discover your unique strengths and areas for growth. Whether you're a seasoned business pro or just starting out, the Janus Entrepreneurial Report will help you identify and leverage your entrepreneurial tendencies. Don't wait, visit Prospirit.com and start your journey to success today.
Now, let's dive back into our journey of entrepreneurial insights.
I often hear that call to action referred to as the ask. You have to end with the ask. You're throwing it in their court now.
Most of the times when I get involved in an elevator pitch, I'm not asking for an investment after an elevator ride up. That's premature. I'm just trying to get their attention so that they want to meet with me or be in communication at some later date.
That's a hyper effective strategy for the real world. Pitch competitions and stuff might have different rules on how you end it. But in the real world, typically it's how do I get more than the next 2 minutes of your time?
The work we're doing with the Janus Entrepreneurial Assessment, I use the technique of an elevator pitch very often when I'm on an airplane, ideally in first class, because there's a lot of people that are decision makers creating positive action. When I get on the plane, I'm one of those people that will start talking with the individual. And basically, I'm trying to find out, what do they do? And if in my mind, they can align to the Janus Entrepreneurial Assessment, I'm like, okay, here comes the elevator pitch. And I very quickly speak with them, and we probably haven't even taken off. And the call to action, they very often ask me, how do I get in touch with you to speak further? This is very interesting. That's when I know I've accomplished this very successfully. I'm not on an elevator. I'm sitting on an airplane, and we're just taxiing out. And then I put my earbuds in and don't bother the person the rest of the flight.
And they probably appreciate that.
Oh, very often. But 9 times out of 10, when we're deplaning, they'll say, don't forget to get back in touch with me or send me the information. We discuss whatever it is. They very often will remind me, please follow up, which means that it's a successful elevator pitch.
I find myself, because this is the practice that I'm in, when you meet people for the first time, everyone asks you, what do you do? I take that opportunity to give the elevator pitch for the thing I'm working on that I'm most excited about. Oftentimes, it actually opens the conversation up a lot more than, I'm the CTO at this consulting company that I started.
What's important for people, and most of our listeners are going to be nascent first-time entrepreneurs, don't follow the path that I was explaining on the plane where I ask the person, what do they do? And if it's pertinent to me, then I will go into it. Otherwise, I put the earbuds in and start working if it's not pertinent to me. When you're starting, it doesn't matter if it's pertinent to you. Give the pitch anyways because you practice. Even if it doesn't matter, keep playing with it and then do an analysis of what words did I use resonated, what got their interest, and then you can fine-tune the elevator pitch as you're moving forward by practicing.
Practice is the most vital part of this. I know every time I get involved in a new venture, the first few times the elevator pitch comes out, whether it's from a sales perspective or telling it to another team member, you fumble over it. Or they interject a question halfway through and your mind just goes blank. The more you can practice it, the more you get interrupted, the more you have to shift, the more you have to factor in who that person is and how you can tailor it to them, the smoother it gets.
This is the same advice I give people that are on sales calls, because this is, in essence, it's a very quick sales call. When you walk out the door, take notes. Write down what they said, what your response was, and really think about that and develop it. Don't just try to reside on your memory the next time. Oh, yeah, someone said that. What should I have said? Really work on this, and you can fine-tune it so that you're totally prepared, because while an elevator pitch has consistencies, it's not necessarily scripted, and you might need to adapt based on what they're saying.
It's a really key piece of information you just covered there. Instead of banging your head against the wall and doing it 10,000 times before it becomes natural, taking even 1 minute afterwards to reflect on how it went so that you can compare the outcomes and how things changed will get you to that 10,000th time a lot faster.
Your mindset is so important when you're doing this. Be positive and upbeat. Don't be bland with no intonation in your voice, because if you're not excited about it, if you're not passionate about it, that person sure as hell is not going to be.
Yeah, and the reality is energy is contagious. If you're bubbling and full of energy or excited, as you put it, they're most likely going to reflect that back onto you. It takes a special type of person to just totally not engage when someone's genuinely happy, interested, excited to tell them something.
How you deport yourself is so critical. Someone might be interested in the idea, but they might be thinking, I don't want to work with this person.
And they might give you really good feedback. Who knows?
Feedback is important also. If you're new at this too, is after you've given the pitch, ask someone for their feedback. What did they think?
Yeah. That's a quick lesson in how to get comfortable in uncomfortable situations.
Really, feedback is just that, feedback. It doesn't mean you have to accept it, but listen to it. And then you analyze, is this viable or is this not viable, what they're saying? Are they speaking from a position of being informed or are they uninformed? But you can analyze it. I've gotten feedback that very often is not something I wanted to hear, but it was like, damn, I missed that. Thank you.
And those can be the biggest educational pieces ever. When someone is brutally honest with you, I've done this a million times. My flinch reaction is to say, no, you're wrong. If I really sit there and think about it, there's a grain of truth to everything that you hear.
What about some of the pitfalls of mistakes people make in elevator pitches? What are your thoughts on that?
The first part of the statement should be a hook. People tend to just throw BS at you. The biggest number, the craziest thing, instead of being a hook, it's now so ludicrous that you just immediately disqualify everything else that comes after it.
Saying something that's absurd as the first word is out of your mouth will have the opposite effect of a positive impact statement.
That's right.
In our field, we see this because we both tend to work in the technical field. People are being overly technical and throwing the technical jargon around. That's a turnoff to people.
Absolutely. You have to keep your audience in mind.
I see people make the mistake of making it too detailed. You have a very brief window and you don't want to be getting caught in the minutiae of the details and never getting to what the vision or the call to action.
It's important to get to that ask. And once the elevator doors open or everybody stands up around you on the flight example you gave, it's over. You don't get 2 or 3 more seconds. It's done. So unless you got to that ask, you're not going to get to make it.
Another one that turns me off is the all about me pitch. It's me, 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 how great I am. That totally turns me off. I want to hear about the concept and possibly the team that you formed. I don't want to hear how wonderful you are.
Right.
Hell, I can go to any bar and hear people tell me how wonderful they are.
Lack of data is a big one that I see. Purely relying on the hype of the situation and not providing some key points to track along with the conversation.
That's important to maybe not necessarily to present the data in the elevator pitch or 1 or 2 key data points, but to have the data ready in your back pocket. So when you're asked a pointed question, in your mind, you're saying, I'm glad you asked. And here's data to validate proof of concept that we're talking about, because that will impress the hell out of people if you can pull data off the top of your head that answers their question.
Know your market. Hopefully your goal is to become an expert in whatever this industry is. Here's your chance to prove it a little bit.
Absolutely.
Well, any final thoughts?
I'm going to say one final thing, and I've said it probably a couple of times. Don't forget the call to action. Just like a salesperson, they're afraid to ask for the order. Don't be afraid to ask for a call to action. That's probably the biggest mistake I see people make.
I love it. Well, let's get entrepreneurial.
Let's get entrepreneurial.
As we wrap up another episode of the Let's Get Entrepreneurial podcast, we extend our gratitude for your presence and attention. Your dedication to the entrepreneurial spirit fuels our passion for creating this podcast. Check out profspirit.com to discover resources and courses designed specifically for innovators like you. Stay on the cutting edge by following us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube, and other platforms as it is released. Until then, keep the entrepreneurial flame burning.